So we have seen what is a hazard and how we can identify hazards. Moving into the second step of risk management, which is the analysis of risk, let's first define risk. Risk is the potential of a hazard to cause a consequence. This is expressed in terms of predicted probability and severity. Probability refers to the likelihood that a safety consequence or outcome will occur from the identified hazard. Severity is the extent of harm that might reasonably be expected to occur as a consequence or outcome to the identified hazard. For example, when driving on a motorway, we should examine what is the likelihood of being involved in an accident and how serious could the resulting consequences be: damage, injuries, or perhaps death. Taking into consideration any available statistics and experts' opinion, we might end up in a decision that is highly probable for an accident to happen, and the consequences could be severe damage or even death. In the case of in-depth risk analysis, which is performed by the organization, various tools and tables are used to assist in the decision of the level of probability and severity. In addition, relevant data should be used in order to make this decision as objective as possible. Risk management is by definition a subjective process, and the level of subjectivity depends on the experience and knowledge of those performing it, but also on the quantity and quality of the data used. The level of probability and severity determines the level of risk which is placed on a matrix to define the tolerability of the risk. The matrix uses three colors: green, orange, and red. If the risk is in the green zone, it is considered as acceptable. Operations may continue just being aware of the hazard. If the risk is in the orange zone, it is considered as acceptable based on the risk mitigation. Operations may continue, but additional control measures should be applied to reduce the level of the risk to as low as reasonable possible. If the risk level is in the red zone, then it is not acceptable. This means that operations should stop under the existing circumstances. Control measures should be applied to ensure that the risk level has moved into the orange, or even better, the green zone before restarting operations. Risk assessment cannot be taken lightly, since deciding on the risk level may have an impact on the safe and smooth operation of the organization. Going back to our story, which of the identified hazards do you think should be further analyzed by the organization? Well, most probably, the existing induction process for new joiners should be further analyzed to define the risk. If we assume that after the analysis, the risk level of the induction process is found to be in the orange zone, what would that mean? As we have mentioned earlier, this would mean that the operation is not disrupted, but additional measures should be taken to reduce the risk to as low as reasonable possible. Let's talk a little bit more about control measures. Unless the risk level is identified to be in the green zone, control measures need to be in place. It's time to move on to the next step, which is risk control.